eventually people are going to say, what the hell is going on?
No matter how far you go into the dark, when you flip, you go exactly the same place to the light in our galaxy. Everything. Because everything is in balance. Everything is in polarity.
I think it's just going to get weirder and weirder and weirder, and finally it's going to be so weird that people are going to have to talk about how weird it is.
What the hell is going on, everybody? Welcome to Polarity. My name is Josh, Polarity podcast number 6. Today we have a returning and special guest, the man, the myth, the fourth orb himself, Mr. Ashton Forbes. Ashton, welcome to the show. How you going today, man?
Hey, doing great, Josh. How are you doing? Thanks for having me.
Well,
thanks for having me back, by the way. I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, no problem, dude. I had a really good time on your show last time. I think when you came on this channel last time, it was a bit more serious. You know, I was picking your brain and everything MH370. But today, I was just looking forward to actually just having a bit of a chat. We've been diving into a few things on this channel recently, kind of around teleportation, a couple of weird things. And I know that you've been talking a lot about that as well. So I'm excited to dig into that. But I wanted to start off by asking you, how was contact in the desert? Because I know you were there recently. I've heard a few things like I've heard lots of different things about it. So I was interested just to hear what your perspective was like. How was it?
It was fun. I mean, so it was out at Indian Wells in Palm Desert down there. So it was really hot, but it's at a resort. So when you go there, I mean, some people are staying at other hotels nearby, but like everything's happening in the hotel that's there. It's a big conference center pretty much going on. It was fun to run into like all the people from the UFO community, a bunch of people I've done podcasts with. And then to, just go and meet all of like the people that are the UFO personality people, even the ones that generally don't, like me or care about MH370. And then fun.
Well, I wanted to ask you about that. Do people talk as much shit to you in real life as they do online?
No, nobody's ever said anything in real life. They're just all keyboard warriors, man. And that's the thing people have to realize is like, I think when you talk to a lot of big name podcasters, one of the things they tell you is like either don't read the comments or what have you, but that's not what I would tell people. I would say read the comments and see what people are saying, but like learn to tune out the BS, learn to tune out the haters, just the talkers, you'll see them. And focus on the real genuine people that are your followers. Like those are the people that you want to be cultivating. And those are the people whose opinions like you should actually care about. But yeah, at the Contact in the Desert, it's a UFO conference. So a lot of people out there are, into esoteric stuff. There was the confrontation with Ross Coulthart, which I think was, whatever. Like my opinion of Ross Coulthart is kind of reminds me of my dad, like a rigid personality type person who, once they've made their mind up, that's what their decision is. And there's no point like arguing with them about it. That's just how they are. That's kind of what my opinion of Ross Coulthart was. Just a guy from a different era. And then I actually
had an interaction with him. You actually, had a conversation.
Big confrontation.
Okay,
like
spill the tea. Tell us what happened.
It was just like I came in on a Thursday, I want to say. So I guess it was Friday morning. And me and my buddy Mike were walking down by the pool and, looked to the left and there's Ross. And I recognized Bryce Zabel, even though I'd never met him before. And they were just sitting at a table, like right by the pool at the lunch dinner place, whatever. And, I kind of saw him and I was like wondering if he was going to look. And sure enough, he looked and made eye contact. So I said, "Hey, Ross." And then I could tell he was saying something, but I couldn't hear. So I kind of went back to him, and was like, "Hey, what was that?" And that's when the whole kind of, not a very long confrontation, but confrontation began of a couple minutes where, it started with him like trying to think that for some reason I was there to ambush him or something like that, which is absurd. But, I guess he didn't.
Were you confrontational or did you just sort of ask him what's going on?
Yeah, I mean, I asked him if he thought did he really believe that I'm like some kind of scammer? I think the crazy part is like, there's so many fake narratives and stuff specifically about me being spread by people. People have built up this completely imaginary person in their head about me. And that's why I wanted to just ask him like, "Hey man, like it's easy to go on mainstream TV and talk shit about somebody. It's easy to, dismiss somebody on social media without ever interacting with them. It's a lot harder to dismiss somebody when they're standing straight to your face. And Ross Coulthart, I mean, what do you want me to say? He dodged, like they all do, right? It's like, hey, are you going to give an opinion? Oh, I'm not allowed to talk about that. My lawyers say I can't talk about that. Whatever other bullshit these guys use to hide. I mean, this is a guy that sent a letter to Scott Roeder, which really in any just world would be on mainstream TV talking about why there's an anchor like lying about a social media influencer.
I think that's the thing though with those guys, right? Like I feel like people like me and you who just kind of come from a regular person background, we can kind of talk freely, right? Because we are just exploring things the way, off our own free will. Whereas people like that are tied up in so much bureaucracy, like they're in it. And they feel like they can't say this, they can't say that. And it can be almost really difficult to have a conversation like me and you are having right now, because like they're bound by like their sources. They can't say this because of their sources, which, I guess can be fair enough, but it can make it difficult to like have a authentic, just open human conversation with somebody.
That's exactly it. That's the reason why I wanted to go there too, because it's one thing. It's like you can tell they're all fake as hell. Like a lot of these people are, and when I mean it's fake, is exactly what you described. Is they're bound by whatever things bind them in this life. Sometimes it's their job, sometimes it's their boss, sometimes it's the people that they get their sources from, sometimes it's NDAs, sometimes it's a combination of these things. Sometimes in protecting national security, whatever the reasons are. I'm glad I don't have them. It's got to be exhausting to be dodging normal people, dodging normal conversations, not being able to answer normal questions the way that you want to be able to answer them. I can't imagine having that weight on me all the time, which is why I want to show people, like, that's why I want to interact with people. I'm like, look, I'm not that way. I'm not weaving a web of lies here. Like what you get, what you see is what you get. And I think that's what scares people the most about interacting with me. And that's why I like interacting with people like you, because it's like, oh, it's a genuine conversation. So like, Contact in the Desert. I mean, just to close the loop on the Ross Coulthart thing, I did get to have a one-on-one talk with Bryce, actually, who was a really cool guy. I mean, I enjoyed talking to him. And I mean, I don't think he really understood what was going on, but it was cool that he wasn't like being a dick for no reason. But at the end of the day, I don't think Ross's mind is going to get changed at all, which is fine. I'm not here to try to change people's minds. But the other side of it is like meeting Chris Ramsey, right? Like he's a magician. Turns out he's super cool. That was a lot of fun. I mean, I just like chatting with him, hanging out with him, seeing his thing.
He was chill with you. He had no problems.
Oh yeah, super chill.
Nice, man. He seems like a chill guy.
Yeah, I mean, he seems like a chill guy. I don't get the impression that he's holding back or dishonest or anything like that. But it is funny. I could imagine that he would get approached by like government people because of his position, because of his standing and his YouTube popularity. He's a magician as well, so he's very familiar with misdirection. And he's good at it. He's really good at it, actually.
Yeah, dude.
He's not like an amateur. And he, gets huge interviews with like the big name people because he doesn't ruffle people's feathers, right? And those are the people they want to be able to control the most. So and I didn't tell him this, but what I was thinking the whole time is like, he should be careful. Some people are definitely going to try to control his perceptions, guaranteed.
Oh, dude.
Anyone
that's
genuine out there, they're going to try to control your perceptions. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I 100% agree with that. And he does do a really good job of interviewing people, actually. Like he's had like Lou Elizondo on, and he has a really good way of pushing as best as he can without upsetting people. I think he does a really, really good job of that.
Yeah, he does his homework. You can tell. You can tell the podcasters that come in that have like an outline of what they want to discuss with people, and especially with some of those guys, it must be tough. They probably, I mean, I know they definitely send a thing about what can they talk about ahead of time if there's anything that is off limits or what have you. But him, and then ran into Jesse Michaels as well out there. Jesse was like awkward. I don't know why. Something was going on. I don't know what it is, but like felt like he was like he had like a secret about me that he didn't want let out. Like when someone's like kind of like uncomfortable around you, and you're like, why are you acting so weird? Like. But it may have been because like he got multiple questions about me in in these giant Q&A halls Like this giant
Oh,
Q&A
really?
hall had to be hundreds of people in there. And like multiple people asking questions about me. I was like, what? Like, why are people asking questions about me? I guess we've just reached that point in MH370 where it's like people are wondering why these big name people are ignoring this. And I got to be honest, they're going to be wondering even harder after the next series of revelations because it's mind blowing, man. So yeah, the
Okay.
Jesse thing was interesting too. Go ahead.
Yeah, no. Well, I was going to say, maybe is it because he's never you've never spoken to him before that?
No, I've spoken to Jesse several times. Oddly enough, he's
Okay.
one of the podcasters. He's probably one of the podcasters I've spoken to the most with outside of being on their show. So that's the weirdest part. I've probably spoken to him the most, but never been on a show. Even though he did invite me one time, and I feel like if I pressed him, he would have me on. But I want him to want to have me on. I don't want to be like, hey,
Well,
you should have me on your
so
show.
he invited you. He invited you, but you
Yeah,
you
but he
didn't
wanted
say
to do
yes?
this debate thing with Deep about are wormholes real or something like that. And I was just like, the whole thing felt too gimmicky. I don't want to do that. Like, if you want to interview me, then you can interview me, but don't try to force some other person in there. It felt a little bit clout chasey as well. So I'm not into gimmick stuff. I don't want to do that. And pretty much that's why I said no for the most part on that. But I hope that didn't burn any bridge. I don't think it did. Talking about it probably doesn't help. But again, what I would say about the podcasters, if you don't want to have me on, don't have me on. I don't give a shit. You're going to get what you get if you have me on, is what I'll say. And for sure, the people that have been clearly delaying having me on, and first question we're going to address is, why did you wait so long? What was the issue? Because the topic I'm talking about is wormholes, warp drives, the government hiding this technology. And oh, by the way, now it's nuclear weapons. We might be looking at a fusion bomb in those videos. No one knows what a fusion bomb looks like. So I'm really anyone who's connected to CIA connections, connected to Peter Thiel, people that have CIA people in their ear, really makes me wonder why why there's so many lies being spread about me, and why people are skeptical, or let's say hesitant to have me on their shows, when it turns out what I'm revealing is very, very likely United States nuclear weapon secrets.
Well, I'm going to pose you my own theory about that later. But you did you did appear on Redacted, which is huge. Was that probably one of the biggest appearances you've done? How was that as well? And how was Clayton? Did they treat you well? And was that a good experience?
Yeah, and that's one where Clayton asked if I wanted to come back on after the Gorgon stare revelation, but I was like, you know what? I've already been on your show 3 times, I think. And I don't want it to feel forced. And he's already one of the people who's physicist Ashton Forbes, whatever, which is fine. It's a little bit, I don't really like the whole stealing credentials idea thing, but it just as a sign of respect, it's nice. We talk about physics related things. So Clayton, I love, he's awesome. I met his wife. They're super nice people. And yeah, anytime he would have me on, for sure. But what I told him too was, once I started to realize it was Gorgon stare and go down this path of man, this is dark. This is really actually United States, surveillance, weaponry. What does this mean in terms of the, not necessarily legality, but the moral and ethical thing to do at this point? And that's where I kind of told Clayton, yep, it's all actually real. It's definitely still free energy, definitely still teleportation. But this is why Tucker Carlson isn't being told by presidents. That's what I told Clayton Morris. So actually, I need to go back and watch his interview, because he just interviewed with Tucker Carlson. And I actually, what I really want to know is I'm gonna maybe text Clayton Morris and be like, hey, did you guys talk about any of this technology? Did MH370 come up? Because I'm sure they didn't talk about it on the podcast, but behind the scenes, maybe. I mean, I'm really wondering how many people know about this, and what will it take for people to realize the level of technology that we're actually at behind the scenes.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, speaking of that, the main reason I wanted to bring you on the show was because we've been digging into the S4 files this last week. Basically, I found 6 hours of archival footage from a documentary that came out around mid-90s with, are you familiar with Robert Dean? Do you know who Robert Dean is?
Weirdly, name doesn't sound familiar. I'm usually familiar with
No,
most people.
it's okay. It's kind of like, you know, old UFO lore. He's passed away now. So he was a command sergeant in the United States military. He held the most highest secret, the most top secret clearance available
I've
in
seen
NATO.
this guy. Okay, I looked him up. Yeah, I've seen this. I've seen him in those videos that are like go viral and stuff like that. And
Yeah. Cosmic top secret was his clearance, which almost sounds like a joke. But you look it up and it's there. So this is a footage of him and another guy, Wendell Stevens, talking about stuff they had learned at S4. So check this clip out. The guys on the channel would have seen it this week, but I want to show you.
I can hear you.
Retired bird colonel shared with me. He said, I went down to level, the lower level, the third level, 30th floor. He says, they told me to put on a summer uniform, and it was wintertime. He went down, they had his luggage and suitcase and his briefcase and all. And he stepped through the doorway and he came out and he was at, what's the middle of Australia? Pine Gap? Pine Gap. Mm-hmm. He went through a door at S4 and the other side was Pine Gap.
Australia.
Yeah.
So they already had teleportation at that point.
We were to learn later was just a mile and a half from one of the major UFO ET installations on the planet. The ETs had had a facility there for apparently over 100 years. The retired colonel told me, he said, you know, I was in a state of shock. He said, I didn't feel a thing. He says, I went through the door. I'm in S4 in Nevada. He says, the next thing I'm coming up, being led off to a private set of quarters in a facility that is in Pine Gap, Australia. And he says, it took me a while to adjust to it.
So that's obviously quite wild, right? You've got he walked through a portal. One foot was in S4 and he ended up in Pine Gap, Australia. And this is, you know, years and years ago. But what's interesting is from that clip, they talk about that there are many of these things all around the States, and specifically the one in Australia, Pine Gap, is like a few miles away from a place called Mount Zeal, which remote viewers in the 70s said specifically housed an alien base. Now, I wanted to talk to you about remote viewing and stuff in a little bit, but what are your thoughts on that?
I guess my first
and also,
is,
just quickly, I want you to try and explain, once you give us your thoughts, tell us about teleportation. Like how is it working? How are they doing this?
That's a big question. How are they pulling it off? It's probably the last thing to figure out from the MH370 videos. I think I know exactly what the orbs are. I know when and who produced them about 20 to 30 years ago and figured them out. I don't know where they come from, which is hard to understand. And then the last part is generally I know what teleportation protocol they use, but how did they figure that out? I'm guessing now, based on my most recent research, that there's some connection between thermonuclear weapons and manipulating space-time. Probably the fusion part of it, which is why we haven't had any progress from the fusion perspective in, I don't know how long, 50 years or something like that, 70 years, and we also haven't seen any fusion bombs. Maybe it's because an implosive effect causes a space-time tear. Maybe that's why we've been gatekeeping them. So when I think back to the idea of teleportation, what if they connected this idea of a thermonuclear weapon or a fusion bomb to a wormhole, a bend and a tear in space-time? Here's what my advice to anybody in the UFO community who wonders, like, what should I be researching? What should I be looking into? Look into the connection between nukes and UFOs. Look into the connection between nukes, and not just like shutting them down. Why is there a connection at all? And I'm thinking that the reason why there's a connection is because this type of science, nuclear physics, is what leads to figuring out how to manipulate space-time. it might even be one of those thermonuclear configurations they use for those bombs. Is that a thermonuclear, maybe an aneutronic thermonuclear bomb, which means like no heat. Maybe that is just a tear in space-time. And then to the point of Pine Gap, man, Pine Gap is a weird, scary base, man. The rumors are that they like got rid of a prime minister that wanted to shut down Pine Gap. And they just, well, you're not prime minister anymore. The Americans just came in. We're like, nope. And like, why do we have this super secret base out there in Australia? And it's not really like in a location where you would think it's for like radar purposes. Seems like there must be some other reason why that location. And then lastly, I keep thinking back to that guy whose role playing is Jack, what's his face from Stargate, and how he's like talking about how Stargate was a documentary. If they understood the principles of teleportation way back when, then the jump that they would have to make is to figure out how to produce entanglement wherever they want, or like between 2 points, sustain 2 points. And I think that a hypergate is probably what makes the most sense, like a Stargate, pretty much. Now, I think it probably wouldn't work exactly like we expect, but maybe if they get advanced enough, theoretically, it could be like you just go through a doorway and now you're just somewhere else because they've connected those 2 points permanently. But from what I've researched, the reason why you can't do that is that temporally, there's not a connection like that. It would have to be like a flat surface where like one side is moving in like a slower or faster rate than the other side based on the time dilation. So I don't think that would work. And I think part of the reason why the plane is being engulfed entirely in a bubble before it disappears is because it's like a one-way type teleportation, not a two-way one. So there's multiple different types of wormholes, actually. That's what that means. So could it be done? Yeah. And I think that one of the answers to the UFO phenomenon is that we didn't find flying saucers at all, or maybe there could be a combination. But one of the answers is that we dug something up. What if we dug up a Stargate, a portal that was already there, already working? And then we're like, okay, shit, how does this work? And then, try to figure it out for ourselves.
Well, yeah, I think there's like in this S4 files that we've been looking at, they talk about the fact that there are multiple, like let's just call them Stargates, that there are multiple. They listed a bunch of them. One of them was between like Alaska and Hawaii. You've got the S4 to Pine Gap. And there are also those like weird rumors that the weapon of mass destruction in Iraq was actually a Stargate. And that's why, bases were built around this alleged tomb of Gilgamesh, and that just went under like heavy military occupation by the US. Yeah, it is wild. It really is. Do you think that there is, like, because we're talking about Stargate, what are your thoughts on like truth being kind of stuck in fiction or loosely played out in fiction? So if anyone were to come across the reality of something, it's just the perfect way to discredit them by just saying, bro, you just watched Stargate and you think that shit's real.
Yeah, it's hard to understand, like, what would they do from a disinformation perspective? Certainly stuff's leaking into the media, or into the media we consume. I mean, Star Trek seems to be like 100% accurate. I mean, and that's predates a lot of the physics. So at least
See, I've never watched Star Trek, bro. I've never watched Star Trek. Hit me with a few. I know. I know.
Live stream's over. I'm out. Wow.
Hit me with a few bombs.
As a nerd,
hit me with some bombs.
So I mean, it's okay. Impulse drive, and then they have warp drive in Star Trek, which we would think as being able to move as fast as up to the speed of light. And then they have warp 1 through warp 10. So this is now just the idea of like, we had to come up with a new system beyond Mach because we're moving too fast. And then they also had wormholes as well, but the wormholes in Star Trek were stupid because that was the idea of like an actual worm with its mouth opening up. And then you're like, going through this portal wormhole and you're like looking at the side. And like, if you go into the side, you'll fall into a different dimension or whatever. But like, when you actually look at the physics, that part's not really how it would work. But they also had directed energy weapons, phasers, lasers. Like the main weapons they would use would be laser beams They would have a tractor beam. They would have their like energy shields as well. But then they would also have like photon missiles that would go through the shields. So
Wow.
all of these things are like, when you look at the weaponization of what we've got now, okay, yeah, that they probably made all these things probably a long time ago as well.
What year was this stuff coming out? Like, when did Star Trek pop up
Like the
and
60s,
start talking
man.
about laser beams?
Yeah, like the
Really?
60s. Yeah. So this is
And-
where it's like, and warp drives and everything. So the first warp drive papers and stuff were like in the 90s and late 80s with like the movie Contact and Miguel Alcubierre's warp drive metric. That's not till the 90s. So when you start thinking about this, you're like, okay, shit. They've had this. They've understood this for a long ass time. And this is where I kept thinking, even before I started digging deep into the science, this must go back to like the Manhattan Project or earlier. Also, the Manhattan Project is really, really close to both the Philadelphia experiment and to Roswell, like just in just time order. They're all within a few years of one another. And you start going like, huh, okay, we dropped the bomb in 45. Like we had the Manhattan Project going on. Like, did they learn something else about the nature of reality?
And then this massive sci-fi wave
that
starts kicking off, talking about lasers and all this out there technology. And then fast forward another 40, 50 years, and now it's kind of like these things are they are exactly how they've been portrayed through the media.
Yeah, I
but
think
it's
the
real
problem
now.
is like we must, and for that to be true, there must be this really dark answer, which is that once upon a time in the past, somebody made a choice that we're not allowed to know this information. And now it's gone on so long. Like where's the anti-gravity stuff they were talking about in newspapers in like 1958? Like they knew about this stuff was possible. Star Trek and all this, and they were expecting to make this stuff in the 60s, and then it never happened. 70s, 80s, never happened. 90s, we've got all this stuff. Now we're just all about making Marvel movies and stupid shit instead of actually making warp drives and stuff that would get us off this planet. In fact, it's gotten so bad that our thought leader, Elon Musk, thinks that the warp drives aren't a real thing. He's like flying these stupid rockets that are never, ever in a million years going to take us to Mars. Like giving people false promises of us living on Mars, us becoming an interstellar species, which is never going to happen with his technology. Simple as that. Never going to happen. And at some point, they've got to go, oh shit, we screwed up so badly that we incidentally brainwashed generations of people into thinking that space is an empty vacuum. And because doing this, we protected fusion bombs, we protected manipulating space and time. But at the same time, now we don't have like free energy. Like now the technology's gotten so advanced where we have like microchips doing this stuff. Whereas, in the 70s and 80s, like the cool thing were those magnetic motors that were the free energy motors and stuff. People were building those back in like the 1920s. So now the technology's gotten so advanced that people are seeing orbs of plasma in the sky and they're thinking it's got to be demons from another dimension, as opposed to like, oh, it's a dense plasma focused hypersonic engine with a plasma bubble around it due to superconducting magnets.
Yeah, dude, I was actually talking to Reese about this recently, about these plasma balls that we're seeing and trying to think about what they could be, because he actually did I don't know if you saw it or not, but Ross Coulthart had a lady on called Melinda Leslie, where he did like a UFO tour with her in Sedona. Reese actually did that tour like about a year ago, and he was telling me that not only did he see like a shitload of just normal, like orb looking lights in the sky that were kind of like darting and he used the term swimming, but he saw these red lights that were not very visible to the eye, but when he put on Melinda's night vision goggles, these lights were like far bigger, far brighter. And he said that with the naked eye, though, you could almost kind of see that like the red light it looked like it was illuminating something around it, but you just couldn't see what it was. And, if we kind of go back to what you said about the Philadelphia experiment, which is what, like, the best part of a century ago, almost, we're talking about like cloaking, things disappearing and reappearing. Like, I think the reality of things being able to cloak and disguise themselves is it probably one of the next things that, like lasers, has been in science fiction for a long time, but like we might actually be looking at the fact that some of these plasma orbs that we see may be, this is just a theory, like a power source, a fuel source for a craft that is there, but you just can't see it. That is around it, but you can't see it.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're right. It is. So, I mean, how do we see something? It has to be emitting light in one of the bands that we see, the optical spectrum. So,
Which is not many.
Yeah, which is not much. And if you
Yeah.
can control the wavelength, then you can control whether or not your object is visible, if it is mostly made up of, light like that. So I think they can control the wavelength. They can tune the wavelength inside of like this sphere of plasma to make it invisible to the naked eye. It will still be visible in infrared though, like because we have this multispectral, hyperspectral cameras that we're using. That's the reason why we're using those cameras, because then we can see something even if it's invisible to the naked eye. But definitely, at least some of the orbs, at least the orbs in the MH370 videos, the dead giveaway is the lines coming out behind the orb and in front of it. That's the dead giveaway, that it's the Air Force's dense plasma focus, because what they're doing is it's a compact fusion reactor. They're actually just smart in that what they did is the movement of the orb through the sky actually causes the shock wave of the plasma to like come together. And then they just use the magnetic fields to force it to compress. So it's actually probably just a series of rings, of superconducting rings, stacked on top of each other, like maybe different sizes like this. And they're using a field reverse configuration in there, which is apparently one of the cool configurations you can use for fusion plasma. And it's like I would think of it as like perfectly efficient fusion generator. Perfectly efficient fusion generator that is also now producing over unity, producing excess energy, what we would think of as free energy. And it only needs a small amount of onboard fuel, maybe helium-3 or boron-11. Those are the fuels that I'm currently researching to see. Small amount of that. And it can probably last up there for days, weeks, who knows? I'm not even sure how long, but if it only is meant to stay up there for a really short period of time, then probably even less fuel. And the rest of the fuel it just gets from the air in front of it, causing it to be air breathing. So you're never going to be able to tell between one that's like human made versus if something is alien, unless you have multispectral vision on it, like we have in the MH370 videos with like thermal, infrared, because the lines before and after, what happens in this compact fusion reaction, especially the field reverse configuration from inertial electrostatic fusion, it's basically like just producing electricity directly. Instead of heating up water to produce steam and have it spin a turbine, this is producing electricity as the output, which is like, wait, shouldn't we be doing that for everything, you would think? Yeah, probably. It really makes you wonder why we're not, right? So what this does is it creates a plasmoid, and then actually the jets shoot out in both directions. In fact, I have a great video that we can just share here that I think just explains it perfectly. And the jets shooting out in both directions is exactly what we're looking at. So just here, take a look at this. Tell me this isn't it.
The dense plasma focus are two cylindrical electrodes only a few inches across, nested inside each other. The electrodes are enclosed in a vacuum chamber with a low-pressure gas filling the space between them. A pulse of electricity from a capacitor bank, an energy storage device, is discharged across the electrodes. For a few millionths of a second, an intense current flows from the outer to the inner electrode through the gas. Instabilities first compress the gas into dense filaments. These filaments are little whirlwinds of plasma. The sheath of filaments converges together into a dense pinch or focus, combining all the filaments into one. This filament kinks and twists itself into a tiny dense ball only a few thousandths of an inch across, called a plasmoid.
Boom, plasmoid.
Instability in a plasmoid creates powerful beams in opposite directions. Positively charged nuclei flow in one direction, and electrons flow in the other. The electron beam heats the plasmoid to billions of degrees, hot enough to fuse nuclei together to release fusion energy.
Oh,
wow.
yes.
Some The DPF operates by leveraging electricity to induce a plasma state for some gas. It then exploits a series of instabilities within the plasma to bring about controlled nuclear fusion. We call this focus fusion.
Wow. Yeah, so they figured that out, and that's why you're seeing the beams in either direction, and they can control the magnetic fields to pinch off one side or the other if they want. So like the end of the MH370 videos, we only see the beam shooting out forward, and we don't see it behind it anymore, which I begin to speculate they're like charging up for what they're about to do when they're about to converge. Because what did they just describe there? If you have a separation of positive and minus charge, that's a dipole. That's where electricity comes from. When you have a dipole of positive and minus charge being separated, then that's a circuit. And then that circuit will run until it neutralizes. So what they're describing there is a ball of energy, basically. And why can't that thing be floating around in the sky? They just took the hypersonic engine design that was basically a tube, and they were like, hey, what if we make our tube out of super powerful superconducting magnets? Now get this. Guess what kind of superconducting magnets they're using? I did a little bit. This is my own research. Might be wrong, but pretty confident. They're a kind called YBCO superconductors. They're a ceramic superconductor. They actually got famous in the 90s because Ning Li and Eugene Poklanov were using them and spinning them to produce what? Oh, anti-gravity. So those might have been what they used because those electromagnets are easy to mold into whatever shape they want to mold them into for those superconducting magnets. And that would also explain then why did those people go dark? Why did their research go dark? It wasn't because they were just, it wasn't simple like, oh, we spin this shit and some anti-gravity stuff happens. No, it was like they were using those superconducting magnets to build these, or the basis for these orbs that are now flying around everywhere.
That's interesting. Have you ever looked at anything to do with the Strategic Defense Initiative program, or what it was dubbed as like the Star Wars project?
I have not, but I think Avi Loeb was connected to that. George Miley definitely was discussing that. I was watching an interview with him from 7 years ago last night. And he mentioned, I think, this technology being used on SDI is like, he said you could use this to make literal weapons out of the beams that produces, which, I mean, we know from the MH370 videos, they're definitely making weapons out of it. So yeah, I'm familiar with what SDI is, and that's where I think the like directed energy weapons first started becoming popularized, I think. But
yeah. I mean, when you look it up, like I was quite shocked because, like I said, we looked at the we've been looking at the S4 files, and the other guy who was in that clip that we watched earlier, Wendell Stevens, it was him that said the Star Wars program SDI was basically the public cover where they were told they were going to be, looking at telescopes and kind of looking for life out there. But in reality, like what that program actually was kind of bringing into the military and militarizing, direct energy weapons, laser beams, like all of the technology that you would see in Star Wars. Like this program was kind of the cover to get it from research and development and actually active and being used.
I believe it. So, I mean, I think where it took off from my research is probably the late 90s and early 2000s. It all goes back at least, I mean, it probably goes way further back than this, but like talking about the plasma orbs and kind of connecting it to the sightings becoming more and more popular, going from like flying saucers in the UFO community to like, really, I don't think we've seen flying saucers for a while in videos. We're now just mostly seeing like lights and orbs and stuff like that.
Old tech, bro.
Yeah, I think it was, if it makes sense. I mean, it makes sense that would have been old tech that we were trying to figure out. But the early 2000 or early 90s was when the cold fusion and plasma and EVOs from Ken Shoulders were being popular. And I think what happened was that Pons and Fleischmann flew too close to the sun. Is that they found that fusion was producing excess energy. And I think this aligns with what a lot of the rumors are, that the fusion bombs, the first fusion bombs they tested, produced like 2.5 times more energy than what they expected on the output. And now you're starting to wonder, like, where's that energy coming from? And you go, oh, it's coming from the 0 point energy. It's coming from the ether. But we can't make that public because then people are going to start making their own miniature fusion suns and reactors because they're going to realize that that doesn't take that much to pull off. So that's where I think that's why the DOE stepped in to just completely destroy cold fusion, destroy the reputation of cold fusion, make sure nobody will look at it, because that was going to be how people figured out how it really worked. And that was 35 years ago. So the suppression worked for sure. And then in the 90s, they were doing like the Marauder program, which was like accelerating these plasma toroids, which you could imagine like plasma smoke rings, basically. And what did they find out from that? They found out they were way more stable than they thought. Like I was showing this video of this girl just pushing like something through the water and creating these like connected vortexes that would just float all the way across the pool. And you wonder, like, how does that not just like come apart? Like, how is it stable like that?
I think
that's probably what they figured out. Yeah, that's probably what they figured out with the plasma toroids as well. They figured out, oh, these plasmas are like self-regulating, so they're stable. And if they're stable, like there's probably ways we can extract useful energy out of it while it's just floating around. And then the breakthrough physics propulsion laboratory with NASA in the late 90s and early 2000s. And then all the dense plasma focus, compact fusion reactor, all this stuff in the early 2000s. Ball lightning study, teleportation physics study, all this, like that's where like 2004, 2005 is when all the papers were being written, and people just probably ignored them. And that's where the DIRDs were being written as well. If you want to understand UFO technology, you need to read every single one of the Defense Intelligence Reference documents, all 38. Don't miss one. Every single thing you want is in there. You want bioengineering, you want metamaterial science, you want warp drives, you want wormholes, you want extracting energy from the quantum vacuum, you want super powerful free electron plasma lasers. We got all of that. Air breathing, magnetohydrodynamics, all of it's in there. The reason why those papers were written is because those were all the Black Project engineers. How do I know? Because I've researched basically every single one of them now. Basically everyone.
I love it. I love it. All right. Well, I'm going to pluck you out of your world for a moment. I'm going to bring you to mine. We're going to get a little bit, we're going to go out of the nuts and bolts. We're going to go to the woo. All right. Did you see any of my interview with Lynn White? Did you catch any of that?
Yeah, I saw a bit of it. Which part did you want to focus on?
Oh, well, okay. The MH370 stuff. How do you feel about remote viewing in general? And what do you think of what she made of it?
Well, this is what I'll say. I don't think aliens were involved in the plane. More and more I learn about it, the more sure I am that's human technology involved. And once again, I'm not discounting aliens. Certainly could be an option to what's going on. I am more and more skeptical of it, though. Further back all the science goes. When it comes to psychic stuff, remote viewing stuff, generally I'm not really on board with it. Which is funny because I think that what I reveal makes psychic power, remote viewing type stuff possible. You know, like 0 point energy, time and space being an illusion. The fact that Ben Rich said that the way that teleportation is possible is the same way that ESP is possible.
Yeah.
Oh, time and space is
distance
supposed to be an
illusion.
illusion.
Why are you not on board with it? Because you're right. Like quantum mechanics do seem to kind of give us a way that it works, right?
Yeah, good. It's a good question. And the reason is the same reason why I don't take like Ghost Hunter stuff seriously. Doesn't mean I don't enjoy it. I used to watch so much Ghost Hunters. But after like 11 seasons of Ghost Hunters, there was probably only 2 times total that I ever felt there was even something remotely abnormal that couldn't be explained with just normal, physics stuff. And that's kind of how I feel about remote viewing too. Is that sure, it's fun. I consider it recreational to listen and enjoy that type of stuff, but it's not something that can be based on science. You can't put it in a research document. It's just stories. It's stories, and stories are experiences, and that's why in the Ghost Hunter show they always talk about, well, so and so had an experience, right? Which is okay, and some of those experiences would give me like goosebumps when I would hear them from the person. or like this person, they felt something touch their shoulder, right? And then they have this huge mark on their shoulder. That's cool,
Yeah.
but am I gonna like base my scientific research on that? No.
Yeah.
So that's how I personally draw the line on it. So that's where I think it's interesting, and and how do you tell the difference? Especially after watching Chris Ramsey, for example, the magician, do his magic tricks.
Yeah.
Like, how can you tell the difference between somebody who is really trying to pull one over on you if all the basis is just what they're telling you they're coming up with in their head? You couldn't. And then even in situations, and that's not what I'm saying is happening. It's certainly not what I think is happening with Lynn White. But I think that people can, make logical leap judgments in their head that are pretty close to real life, which is just by, standard deduction and common sense. In fact, I think that's kind of how I do a lot of my research too, is, oh, okay, this makes sense. Like, plane didn't crash. Why? Because we didn't find a debris field anywhere. I don't have to remote view or have psychic powers to figure that out, right? And it seems like magical because a lot of people are brainwashed into thinking stupid stuff. So those are probably my honest thoughts about remote viewing.
No, that's cool. I'm glad you're honest. I think from your perspective, I understood why you sort of maybe didn't go over that way at all, because I feel like, you are obviously quite serious about what you do, and I can understand why adding that as like another element to your evidence would maybe not go down well with certain people. So I do fully respect that. But I think just like the one thing that really caught me up about it was the fact that her blog came out before any of the videos. Her blog came out like 3 days after it. And like the similarities between what she said is what I found really wild. And I wish that I pressed her more on it in the interview, because we kind of because prior to the interview with her, she told me she doesn't do it anymore. She told me that she's like much more religious now, that she feels like remote viewing is like demonic or whatever, which I respect. So I didn't want to push her on it, right? Because I knew that's sort of like not her belief system anymore. So I just kind of wanted to explore it with her. But then after I did the interview with her, just like the other day, she's just started remote viewing again, and she's done a whole other post about like answering more questions about MH370, which for me, I was kind of like, what made you change your mind? Why are you doing that again?
Well, if people are just doing it because it's popular, that's fine. I just think people should be upfront about it, at the end of the day. Like, reality is MH370 stuff is popular. Videos are popular because they're real, and a lot of people are starting to come to terms with them being real.
That I understand. But like the fact, like, if it was just like, oh, that's something I did 10 years ago, but I haven't looked at it for ages, and then did it again. But like the fact that she said it was like demonic and like against her religious beliefs, it felt like very personal. So it felt very strange that she would like flip and just start doing what she just kind of said was like demonic. I don't know. I found that strange.
Well, it's kind of strange to think of remote viewing as demonic too. So maybe she just
I
decided
agree.
it wasn't demonic.
I agree.
Ultimately. And here's what I would say is that it's not like going all in on the psychic stuff doesn't have anything to do with me being afraid of what people would think about it. It's actually just my true beliefs that I don't think that like I said, it's stories. It's not hard evidence that you can base a strong theory about. I would say the way I would look at it is like, if it turned out that what she said was exactly right and she was able to like exactly say what happened, I would say, holy shit, that's crazy. You obviously have psychic powers. But I still wouldn't use it as evidence no matter what, right?
Yeah.
That's how my view is. And that's because my statistics teacher was this guy named Professor Greer. Still remember him to this day, man. What a card-carrying NRA member. Liked his food so spicy that it, like they literally would come and like warn you 3 times about how spicy it was going to be. Is like, make it spicier. Make it spicier. He said he couldn't taste anything. What he told me was that, well, first of all, he told me I needed to be mugged because at that time I was a college student. I was far too liberal. And he said I needed to be woken up. But the important thing he told me was he told me a story about statistics. And what he told us is that, there are billions of people on the planet. There's going to be several miracles happening every single day just by pure numbers. And this is kind of how what they would do with these mailing scams with people is that they would have 50% of the mail things be a yes or 50% be a no. And then you send those out to people and you say, oh, well, half the people got it right. Those people think you're a genius. And then you do the same thing again to those people. And eventually you've got somebody that, oh, they were right 6 times in a row. Must be a miracle, right? Must be psychic powers or whatever. And that's where you realize that statistically, these types of things are going to happen. Statistically, there's going to be a Lynn White out there that has a remote viewing thing that's vaguely similar to what happened, or even closely similar to what happened potentially with MH370, even before the videos were out there. And are we going to be able to prove that she was able to tap into somehow what happened with the event beforehand? No, but it's fun to think about. You know, it's fun to think about. Maybe they could do that, especially in the context of Hal Puthoff, the remote viewing stuff, and the CIA taking it seriously. So for people that are, you know, into that stuff, I would say that's the angle to take is like, why was Hal Puthoff taking this seriously? And then what actual tangible results have come from it? Because I actually thought his interview on Joe Rogan about it was pretty weak. Like his arguments were kind of like, oh, this guy drew some squares on a piece of paper. This proves that he was like actually remote viewing this target. And I was like, you're like a pretty deep science guy. And that's enough to convince you. Like, felt like if he should have had stronger evidence that he could have presented.
I think he did talk about it's Joe McMoneagle remote viewing the Russian submarine. I think that's like the big one, right? That's the big case that he said he saw what looked like the biggest and craziest submarine he's ever seen, to the point that they didn't believe him at first. And then like 2 years later or something, the Soviets rolled out, I can't remember the name of it, but like their massive submarine. And they were like, holy shit, he was right, like 2 years ago. I think that's a big one. It is interesting though, because you're right. At least with the way we do science now, you can't prove it. You just can't prove it, which is,
I mean, you could, you know, if you would just keep your stock portfolio, right? And then do your remote viewing on the stocks. But, you know, people say it doesn't work with that type of stuff or what have you. I mean, it has to be some kind of physical event, a thing that's happening. So, yeah, I don't know. It's challenging, end of the day.
Dude, it's interesting actually. Speaking of Chris Ramsey, and I think next week I'm having Jordan Crowder on the show as well. Both of those dudes are going to be judges at the Sci Games. Have you heard about that? So there's this thing coming up. So I found out about it like earlier in the year. I actually covered it briefly on the channel months and months ago. But there's like a thing happening in about a month called the Sci Games, and it's like literally like the Psychic Olympics, where they're going to be doing like telekinesis, telepathy, you know, other things like just other tests where people can go and test their psychic ability. And I don't know if it's going to be live streamed. I hope it is. But I'm pretty sure it's a multi-day event. And yeah, people like Chris and Jordan are like commentating. I think Chris Bledsoe is like speaking there. It is cool. And I hope it's live streamed, because I mean, something like that though, like that's either going to make or break it. Like if it becomes, well, if it looks like people are demonstrating actual psychic abilities, I think there's obviously going to be an uproar of people saying it's all rigged, it's all hoaxed, of course. And if they're not, and it just falls flat on its face, then I think like that whole thing could take like a huge hit, could take like a lot of damage.
Yeah, and Chris is a magician that made something levitate right in front of me. So yeah, I don't know. People are gonna be skeptical. I don't think it's gonna take damage though. This is the part where like the most absurd argument that people make against me in the videos is that like we're hurting the community or something, or like discrediting the community. I'm like, guys, it's a community that believes in psychic powers and little green aliens and stuff like that. You're talking about discrediting the community, guys. Like, this is the part. One of the first things I realized is that in order to get any traction, you have to appeal to a broader community than just the people that are like already in the woo. And, you know, I incidentally, I haven't even really had to try that hard, because I think that that's where the direction has naturally gone. But that's the part where it's like, it's not going to hurt the community that's out there. And until Chris Bledsoe starts summoning orbs, like in under like 4 hours or whatever, like,
did you go to his thing
in front of a recording? What?
Did you go to his thing at Contact in the Desert? His summoning thing? You didn't see that? There's
no.
a bit of controversy about that, apparently.
Yeah, I'm sure there is. I'm sure there is. And that's the thing where it's like, also just, to talk to, not to sidetrack too much, but some of the other videos that have come out, like what was the Mazel orb video? It's like 2 seconds of this orb going across the screen.
It's shit.
Like, what am I supposed to do with this stuff? Or the
Mhm.
other thing that Jeremy Corbell released, it was like the shadow in the sky or something, but that was after like the filters had been exposed. I'm like, what am I supposed to do with this? It's something just floating in the sky. We've got no information whatsoever about it. It could be a shadow. Have no idea if that's even a solid object. Like, this is the part where, like, I'm telling you guys, they are just going to dangle the carrot forever. They're going to dangle this carrot forever. The reason why they're giving you the most garbage videos ever, and yes, those videos are garbage. Like, that's got to be some of the worst footage that they have out there. It's ambiguous, doesn't tell you anything. There's no details at all about it, but it's sensationalist, right? Oh, we've got a new video, a new drop by Jeremy Corbell. Check out Weaponized at 12 o'clock high noon. Go UFO. Like, that's what it does for you. Does it actually answer any questions whatsoever? No. It just has you getting more questions. And that's where, like,
I love it.
Anyway, go ahead.
You're almost as sarcastic as I am about it. I love it. But
I'll get there. I'm trying real hard. And I want people to know my sarcasm, my jadedness is 100% natural. Like, I came into this open-minded. In fact, Jeremy Corbell was the first person that followed me and the first person I reached out to, and he never reached out to me once. Not to ask my opinion, nothing. Right? And it's like, that just seems weird, man. Like, if I'm a journalist, wouldn't I at least want to talk to the person doing the investigation? Nope. No one wants to do that. No mainstream media people have ever reached out. None of the UFO people ever reached out. Wouldn't they just want to, like, talk to me? Nope.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that was part of why, like, I was stoked to talk to you as well, because there is obviously so much noise around you and your work. And I was interested in it just for my own personal reasons, but I was also interested just to talk to you and, like, what kind of vibe do I get from you? What kind of person are you? And yeah, I mean, there are a lot of stories out there about you, but I mean, I just like to make up my mind about people from my own experience. And I have to say, my experience with you has been great. You chill dude, seem like a normal guy. Yeah, I think everyone should just like shut down the noise and just make up your own mind about things. But
Yeah.
let's move on to the next thing, right? So this is where I'm going to see if I'm going to try to change at least 1% of Ashton's mind, and if I can get 1%, I'll be happy, right? So I recently did a long live stream called basically it was like a history of orbs and spheres, and I went back looking at cases starting in 1887 was the first one that I found, and this was like an old newspaper report. It was so old that I tried to read it on stream, and it was written in like old English, and I just sounded like an idiot reading, because like I couldn't even read it properly because it was using words that like we don't even use today. But it was about like a blue metallic sphere that appeared out of the sky, and it was just a perfect anomaly. So there's that, 1887. You might have saw Harold Malmgren on Jesse Michaels recently, where he was saying that these things would tail their missiles, their rockets, that they were so common that they called them tag-alongs. Like, they were just used to these things up in the sky called tag-alongs, and that was probably in the 60s. Obviously, the Foo Fighters too, in World War II, there are these anomalous orbs around those planes. There's also this here, which I'll just show you quickly. You may have seen this before. This is just, let me find where it is. Where have I got that? This is basically an orb that is tailing the Concorde. You know the Concorde, yeah? That old plane that's no longer running. So I don't know if you've seen this. It's a short video, but you can see there is that little thing that looks just kind of like, that looks really similar to how they look in the satellite MH370 video, actually. So there's this, right? This is 1970, I'm going to say 6, somewhere around the 70s, right? You got another orb there coming around a plane, which is very interesting. And then we also have another one, which, let me just remove this. I have another quick video, which I actually mentioned this to you on our podcast But I just found it's kind of like a TikTok AI clip, to be honest, but it's a little bit cringy, but it explains the story kind of well. So check this out. This is Frederick Valentich. This is an Australian case.
Over the mysterious waters of the Bass Strait, a baffling aviation mystery unfolded in 1978, one that continues to intrigue and perplex to this day. Frederick Valentich, a young, ambitious pilot, embarked on a routine flight from Melbourne to King Island. As Valentich navigated the clear skies, his routine journey took a turn into the extraordinary. He reported an unidentified aircraft, describing it as hovering and not resembling any known flight craft. Valentich's final transmission echoed with confusion and disbelief, reporting strange maneuvers and the eerie presence of an unknown object. Then silence. The radio went dead. The Cessna, along with Valentich, vanished without a trace, leaving behind nothing but an enduring mystery. Despite extensive searches, no trace of Valentich or his aircraft was ever found.
Not a trace of the plane or the pilots ever been found. Hang on, I'm nearly done. So there's that. That was never found. Plane completely disappeared in Australia. That was also in the 70s, actually. So you've got this long history, and there's many more in between that I went through on the stream. You've got this long history of these anomalous orbs being interested in planes disappearing. And then you've also got this, the three-body problem show, right? Which in the Harold Malmgren interview, he kind of talks about how Pippa talks about how this book was kind of encouraged to be read by people in the upper levels. And, the sort of the basis in that story is that when people get too close to discovering a certain technology, that they are either like killed or removed, or they are kind of forced to stop somehow. And I know your big argument, and it's valid, is that, why would they have this this drone there to watch this plane if it wasn't a military operation? My argument, my theory to you is that what if, because that plane had 20 semiconductor scientists on it or something like that, people who were potentially leaking or dealing with things that were sensitive. What if they knew what happens, and it's very similar to the three-body problem. People disappear when they're dealing with this technology, and they were monitoring that aircraft to see if, like to keep an eye on it, but the aliens came and zapped it away. What do you think?
No chance. Sorry.
Oh, come on, dude.
I like
Not
that
even
show,
a 1%?
That show's a fun show where, the aliens are coming. They're like, and I think that could be the answer at the end of the day. I'm not actually ruling that part out. Just MH370 part makes no sense. If the aliens need to interfere, they're not going to interfere with the Boeing 777 with 20 people on it. It's like, and everyone gets so upset because they're like, you don't know what the aliens' motivations are. I know that that's human motivations. And I know that I'm looking at Gorgon stare and a Northrop lightning pod. It's just like, this is the part I try to tell people too, is that like that drone with that camera on it is like a donkey with a missile launcher on it. Why does this drone have this targeting pod with color FLIR? The thing's a massive pod that they've just like put onto the wing of it. It's because this is some CIA jank ass operation that they got set up to do this whole thing. But that is also true, what you're saying about the three-body problem. It's just not aliens. It's us again. We're the ones killing all the scientists that get too close. Isn't that the whole story of free energy for like the last 50 years? Is like everybody that gets too close, they have an accident, they get killed, they get they go to prison for some fraud or something that they get made up for, right? Like that's what they're doing. Now, could there be some connection to aliens at the greater level? Certainly, I think there could be. The thing that I give the most, let's say, percentage points to is that we are the aliens. Like, we are the aliens. So when they're like, oh, the aliens are controlling us, yes, because we are the aliens, and the only ones that know that we're the aliens are the people that are up at the top. And they have access to the real technology. The rest of us are slave aliens that don't get to know about the truth for whatever reason. I don't know. I don't know the motivations of sick bastards that are hiding this technology from us. But that would also then connect to the idea of the tall whites. It's just that the tall whites aren't necessarily like these like pale white creatures. It's just like we were the aliens, right? Like that would be that idea. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's kind of where I was gonna go into next, because there is these stories I'm sure you've heard of, like Eric Burleson saying David Grush knows that Trump has been briefed on a tall white species, which I think there's like a little bit of because I think what's interesting about this is Eric Burleson clearly doesn't know shit about that topic until like the last 6 months. You know, it's like he's been partnered up with David Grush, and David Grush is just like unloading knowledge bombs onto him. And I think you can see it in Eric Burleson's eyes. He's usually always like, he's just fucking, excuse me, he's just heard some shit, right? And I think he's also trying to process a lot of wild information, and it's hard for it all to sink in so quickly. And there is a bit of confusion between what people consider Nordics and tall whites. And there's like there's the stories of Charles Hall, who talks about working with tall whites in Nevada. But that is like not Nordics. They are like weird, like almost skeletal beings. But then there are these like Nordics, and they look just like us. I don't know, dude. I don't know what's what. But I think the theory that we could be them, or like an offshoot of them, I'm on board with that for sure. Definitely a possibility.
Yeah, there's a lot of answers to what the non-human intelligence question can be. I think it is weird that Eric Davis is more focused on that in these interviews than talking about teleportation. I mean, it's just weird that even if you're an alien guy, you would want to know how they're getting here. And if they have some advanced technology, you would want to know what is the propulsion technology. And when you look at the media, the public, like the stuff that we consume, the answer is they have wormholes, they have teleportation. Like everything we see, they're teleporting through the sky, right? Like, that's the part where it's like, I'm surprised that it's a big stretch for people. It really shouldn't be. Like, that's what I would want to hear Eric Davis explain. How are the aliens getting to us? And then he can go, oh, they might be, and his answer is going to be a very elaborate, it's very scientific answer about wormholes, probably. And then Eric Burleson, like, I've had communications with Eric Burleson. I did an interview with somebody that's one of his friends, that's like a radio host. And like, from a science perspective, he's not close. I mean, maybe he's close from like maybe understanding what they can do, but I know that the people his advisors have no idea about the science and how the science works. But yeah, he's probably being told by like, I can also at the same time, like that'll be my criticism. I'll say on the positive side, I'll say that definitely has seen a big change in Congressman Burleson in terms of where my first interaction with him, like over a year ago, to where he is now. Like, he's clearly just jumped in head first. And to tell you guys the truth, I told him like, hey man, I know these videos are real. This could help boost your popularity or whatever you want. Like, I don't know what a politician wants, but like, you know, if you talk about, I told him like, you don't have to talk about like you think the videos are real. You don't have to put yourself out there like that. Although that would be one way to get attention. Another way is just talk about the science, talk about quantum mechanics, talk about what's the energy source for UFOs. And you are at least now seeing him. He went there and looked at those mummies, and he's looking at the Boogosphere, or maybe he didn't do both of them. I don't know. So he's jumping into it for sure. But I think that the whole alien thing is a bit of a distraction. And when I say it's a psyop, I mean, it's not that aliens aren't real. I mean, they want us focused and talking about aliens because it doesn't move the ball forward. Doesn't move the ball forward at all. What will move the ball forward is, oh, teleportation is real. Well, then, holy shit, does that move the ball forward for aliens? Because, okay, we know how the aliens are getting here now. They're just teleporting, right? That would move the ball forward. And then we can start to talk about, what kind of aliens could they be that are teleporting here?
Well, according to Eric Davis, they're reptilians.
That's the part where he says that. I'm kind of like, it's a little too on the nose. It's like, oh, are you going to tell me they also look like ET? Are they going to tell me they're also little green aliens? Like, I kind of expect it to be something I'm not expecting. Like, if he comes and tells me they're like AI, creatures that are like biologically made, but they have computer brains, then I'll be like, oh, okay, now he's telling me something real. But when he's just like, oh, it's just reptilians and the whatever, the Ebens, I'm like, oh, those are just the normal aliens.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Richard Dolan's been saying recently, like, what if it's all real? Like, the reptilians, the Evens, the android programmed life forms. Like, dude, who knows? It could literally all be it. I think whatever the species is that is interacting with us, I personally think they've always been here, or at least they've been here for a long time. But I do agree with you that if, when disclosure comes, if it comes, it is going to be steered away from the technology. And I think it will be about probably a non-human intelligence, because I think, they're not going to give up that technology. And whether I agree with that or not, I think there is obviously massive dangers in kind of revealing that sort of stuff to us.
Yeah, did you see the thing today where I think both Jay, I actually mended the bridge with Jay. I actually forgot why I was beefing with Jay Anderson, to be honest with you. But both him and Jesse Michaels are both talking about the show Dark, and how the rumor is behind the scenes the show Dark is really accurate to what's going on. The show Dark,
I've heard that about Dark too. I've never seen it though, but tell us.
It's a closed loop time travel, meaning there's no changing the past. The guy goes to the past and he creates a closed loop universe because of going to the past. And then what happens is when he gets older, he has to repeat what he did when he saw himself. So imagine you are a kid, but you're old enough to remember what happened, and you meet an older version of yourself. And something happens, right? Like the older version of yourself hands you a manuscript, and the manuscript says a book by Ashton Forbes. And you're like, wait, I write a book? That's cool. And then you go and you publish that book, and you become a famous author for that book. And then you get older and you go, oh shit, I have to travel back in time to hand myself the book, right? And how do you know that happens? You know it happens because you watched it happen. You were there when it happened. So you know it must happen in the future. And there's no matter what you do, you can't change that. Because that happened, that always happened. And so you create an Ouroboros, an infinite cycle of this closed loop time system that always happened. Who wrote the manuscript? Nobody did. But the manuscript exists, and it's technically written by you, because that's what happened in that universe, in that closed universe. So that's the idea behind Dark. And it also connects it to nuclear explosions and nuclear detonations as well. I can't remember the whole, I think it's because that, like a nuclear detonation, what sets everything off. And so now, if somebody had control to that type of technology, you could change the time stream, but you could only change it in a way where it's self-reoccurring. In Dark, there's no infinite timelines. It's not like when you go back in the past, you create a divergent past. Whatever you did always must occur. And so that form of time travel is weird to think about, but it doesn't break any causality issues. And that's why people like it, is that no matter what you do, you can't change the past.
That's interesting. Yeah, it's like one of my favorite movies when I was a kid was the original Butterfly Effect with Ashton Kutcher, which is kind of the opposite of Dark, I guess, where it is kind of like infinite and multiple sort of attempts at doing things. But yeah, that stuff is super fascinating. I'll have to check out that TV show Dark. I did just get it sounds really good. $10 super chat from Yoza wants to know, what are Ashton's thoughts on Greer currently?
So Greer is the person who I think was the closest to all this and figuring it all out before I came along and kind of went right past everybody, I feel like. And I don't mean that to be cocky. It just is what it is. So I see a lot of people talk about like, this guy's got confidence. Yeah, I've got confidence because I know those videos are real. And at this point, I'm like, holy shit, I'm revealing nuclear weapons. So this is relevant because the line that Greer has publicly stated he won't cross is the weaponization angle of the technology. And that's the line I've just jumped right over. I've just jumped right over. Because if they were ever to say anything about to me, then they're just giving everything that I've researched more credibility. And so that puts me it puts them in a catch-22. Because now I can keep pushing and pushing and pushing. And then the moment they come back at me now, oh, people are wondering, why are they telling me to stop? Right? So I'm going to keep pushing until they do. Greer knows where the line is. The problem, this is what Greer doesn't understand. Stephen Greer does not understand Friedwart Winterberg's introduction in his Thermonuclear Dynamics Principles book from 1981. He says right there, inertial electrostatic confined fusion is what they've been hiding. They've been hiding it because of fusion bomb, the H bomb. And there's no way to get one without the other. If you want infinite energy of fusion, you are getting H-bombs as well. And even Winterberg says straight up, people have said, well, can we just get one or the other, or have some partial disclosure? No, there's no way to get partial disclosure. Once you understand one, you understand the concept of the universe, you understand the ether, the 0-point energy, it all comes along with it. And that's what I've tried to tell Greer. And this is why my question, this is the question I asked
tried
Jeremy
to tell
Corbell
Greer? You've spoken to Greer?
one time. And I've spoken to his producer one time as well. But this is why I think that we
How
haven't
was he?
connected. Both chill. Yeah, I only spoke to him on a space one time and just asked him one question about weapons. But the question that I want to ask everybody is, do you still want disclosure if disclosure meant the end of the world? That's really what's at stake here. Is like, if we get disclosure, the disclosure that everybody wants, okay, aliens are real. They've got these flying saucers and plasma orbs, and they can teleport around. And now here's that free energy technology for everybody. The clock starts at that point. The clock starts, and at some point, some religious fundamentalist, terrorist, whatever, is going to blow us all up. Is going to say, I'm going to be the one to wipe out the planet. I'm going to be the one to bring about the end times for everybody. And they're going to wipe us all out. That's going to happen. So this is what I tell people. Do you really, really want disclosure? Do you know what disclosure is? Because disclosure is the end of the world, starting that clock. And according to letter to
it's technology. If it's the technology, right? If it's the technology. If it's just the aliens, then
there is no just
potentially
the
not.
aliens. How are the aliens getting here? What is the aliens? Like,
They've always been here, bro.
What's the amazing part about the aliens, though, right? The amazing part about the aliens is the idea of they're coming from somewhere else. If they were already here, then they're not aliens. They're just squids at the bottom of the ocean, right? It's just like, if they were already here.
I think that's the diversion, dude. I think that's the diversion. I think they've always been here. They've lived here and probably been socially engineering and guiding us from the shadows for a long, long time. And I think looking up is the perfect place to get people to look, when in reality they're coming from below the floor, below the ocean.
They can be wherever they want. If they've got the technology, like I'm assuming, they could be wherever they want. They could even be invisible all the time as well. So it becomes really difficult at that point, because, okay, we have invisible aliens running around. The problem is we're not seeing them, right? Unless they look exactly like us, which is a possibility. We're not seeing them. I mean, we live in an era in 2025 where people have had smartphones for 20 years, and there's no videos of aliens anywhere ever. A lot of videos of orbs and other anomalous stuff, but no clear videos of, that's an alien, right? I mean, there's a couple, but
yeah.
And that's the problem with that theory. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it's like, I think that disclosure of alien life is gonna become self-evident when hyper advanced technology becomes self-evident. When technology way beyond the paradigm that we're at right now. And I think that all is going to lead back to nuclear weapons. Why were aliens shutting down nuclear weapons? Why is there a connection between UFOs and nuclear weapons? Probably because the basis for the UFO technology is nuclear physics, is fusion. Fusion is their energy source. If you ask Hal Puthoff, he says he was asked one time on that NASA podcast what he thinks the energy source for the UFOs is. And he says either a neutronic fusion or 0-point energy. And it turns out 0-point energy is more of an abstract idea, like the idea of the ether. Tapping into that is fusion. Tapping into it is fusion.
Yeah, it's super interesting stuff. I think I'm conscious of time as well. So what I might do is, I wanted to ask you just before we wrap up. I know you recently did you've got a whole thing behind you, which I believe is Magic the Gathering. And you did like a video recently. So yeah, you're obviously a little bit of a nerd, which I love. You play Magic. Do you play any video games? Like, what else do you do?
I've just been playing Magic the Gathering recently. I got back into it from this new Final Fantasy set. I hadn't played in a long time. I think I missed like 20 sets, but they just never stop coming at you. But I like those games because I like strategy games. It's like strategy games, card games, any game of skill like that I enjoy a lot. And I just haven't had time for for video games. But weirdly, when I got involved in this case, like my appetite for video games like just disappeared
Yeah.
entirely. Like I just didn't even want to play games, which was weird because I come from a gamer growing up where I had every console, I had every game that was out there. But you learn about, like, I don't know, weirdly learning about the science, learning about Tesla technology and all this, what it can do, everything it can do is more amazing than video games. In fact, now it's hard. It actually kind of ruined a lot of sci-fi shows for me now. I can't even watch them anymore because I'm like, oh, is this going to be another one that thinks that like faster than light travel and communication is not possible? If so, I'm just not even interested. And most of them, that's like it's like that's where they draw the line because they're going from a conventional view of the universe. I'm going, what about entanglement, guys? How come people aren't playing around with entanglement? Or they'll just use entanglement as like they did in the 3-body problem. It's like, oh, what do they call the Sophons can do entanglement? Well, then why can't they just teleport there? Like, what's the deal? The Sophons got there, but they can't get the whole plane there. I don't know.
I feel that a lot actually because I was the same. I was a massive gamer. Like I was deep into MMOs and MMORPGs, which are like, like World of Warcraft, RuneScape, like real grindy games. And it kind of, and like I have my accounts in those games are like full turbo virgin, right? And I was and it kind of got to a point where I was like, if I put the same kind of like energy and the amount of grind that I put into these games into like something creative, I was like, I could probably do something pretty cool. And now I kind of like treat my like YouTube analytics like my RuneScape stats, like my World of Warcraft character. And I'm just like, I'm just building my character. And I'm like, wow, this is kind of the same thing, but I don't feel as devoid of life as I do when I play RuneScape for 17 hours a day.
That's awesome, man. And I'm glad I can help and build your channel up because I think we need more and more voices that are there. My only advice would be to not let your metrics try to consume you, right? Like one of the lessons I learned from my high school soccer coach, which was don't ever let your emotions get too high or too low. Like just try to stay even because it's easy to get to this high and then be chasing this high over and over again. But reality is a cyclical cycle up and down, man. And this is where people
100%.
will complain on social media that they're suppressed or whatever. Maybe their content's just not that great. At the end of the day, too, like things come and flow, ebbs and flows. Like when you hit that cycle, when that wave comes, you want to be on that wave, right? When people are talking about manipulating space and time, and now everybody's reaching out to Ashton Forbes. It's like, okay, I'm going to hit that wave. I'm going to talk to the big people, right? I'm going to get on Benny Johnson at that point. But don't stress too much when people aren't paying as much attention. Just do your thing and put your content out there is how I would, how I look at it.
Yeah, no, I love that, man. And you're right. It is, it's not like a race. It is just, you just got to kind of go with the flow. Don't get too caught up in it and don't get too down on the shitty comments either. Just before I let you go, we do have 2 quick questions here. If you just want to shoot some quick fire answers. Rambro says, Ashton, who are you rocking as your MTG commander?
I haven't been playing Commander. I'm a big draft player. Like I'm obsessed with draft. I'm like really, really, really good as well. So I mostly do draft, but when I was with Tim Pool, he had like all the Commander decks, like all the super expensive ones. Like I was looking through his stuff. Like, I'm pretty sure I was playing with cards like worth thousands of dollars. And I was playing Arcades, which is like the wall deck. So not like that great, but I don't know, pretty cool. And then one other story I was going to say is another thing. I used to be like you as well, is like full DJ. And I played World of Warcraft Classic when it came back. And I used to play
my guy.
We're going to start a guild? Oh, man. It was like huge. And then I got into like raiding and like the GDKPs. People will know what that means.
Yeah.
Like,
gold
DKP. Like basically people wager for every item that drops. Like it's whoever's willing to spend the most money on it. And then you distribute the money amongst everybody who went along. I got deep into it, like deep in the community. I was like, not necessarily, I didn't want to like lead the raids, but I would like be like the assistant person to like help make sure we all get coordinated and everything like that. And I'm like OCD about we're going to be successful. I'm not running on shitty raids where we're not going to win.
I feel like you'd run a good. I feel like you'd be a good raid leader for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, I didn't like all the pressure of doing all that, but I'm more of like the guy that's like behind the scenes whispering people, or like somebody's not doing whatever and getting their shit done, you know. But
You're
I
the
think
guy.
that
You're the guy. You're whispering the guy at the bottom of the DPS meter, like, bro, what are you actually doing? Are you pressing your
like,
key?
bro, do
Or
you
what?
get your consumables? Hold on, you need some
Yeah.
consumables? I got open up trade. Here we go. I got some consumables for you, bro.
What did you play? What was your class? What did you play?
I played multiple characters because I was super sweaty. But so I had
Me too.
a mage, I had a warlock, I had a rogue, and I had a paladin, and I had a druid. But my main
Nice, your
ones were
alliance.
my paladin was my tank in TBC, and then I was a rogue in classic, but I never got the super swords or whatever they're called, thunder, whatever.
I had a
But my
Thunder
druid,
Fury.
Thunder Fury, yeah, my druid
Yeah.
though was all full T3 with the best weapon, the trinket, the offhand, everything.
Nice. Hell
Because I was a disgusting druid healer, and I was on for at least briefly. I was on this guild called Classic Raiders. We were in Skull Crusher server, and it was the top guild, and I was the one druid healer in the raid, in the 40-man raid, and we had the fastest time of anybody on the server by several minutes. And then this is a story that I tell my brother about it, because this same thing, you guys have probably experienced a story like this. This happens time and time again, was that they wanted to like push for like, shave like 5 seconds off. And they decided that like I wasn't fairy firing the mobs fast enough to like, oh, they're trying to convince me it's going to save like a few seconds here or there, that like I'm doing the wrong thing. And I'm like, becomes this whole deal where I'm like, guys, I'm keeping people alive. I'm the healer. Like, I know what I'm doing. If there was opportunities for me to like fairy fire the mobs more, I'd be doing it. And they ended up like replacing me with a different druid. And then in that same week we're doing Nax Ramus. If people know, this is like probably one of the hardest raids there is. It's like a 4-hour raid, and we were doing it in an hour and a half. The same week that they replaced me, they couldn't even finish it, and then the guild completely disbanded after that, and they never raided ever again. And the lesson I teach people is like, don't try to be like something more than you are. Just be, once you get in your groove, just go into your groove. And the other thing I teach people is, people on the internet are asshole retards, and they're always going to be that way. No matter what community you're in, they're always going to be that way. There's always going to be people that are, making stupid decisions, that are treating you like crap for no reason. End of the day, just control the things you can control.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, as a warrior and a tank and DPS, I would say get that fairy fire up, but I respect it.
Get that fairy fire up right now. Where's the fairy fire?
Quick.
Where's the fairy fire? Like, holy shit. Okay. Yep.
Last one, man. Just a quick answer for Toxic Fart. How do you explain the big loopty that MH370 did before disappearing hours later?
Oh, yeah. The first turn back, it was definitely a fire. It was a fire on board the plane. For the people that are confused about this, they're like, how can there be a fire and the orbs? Well, this is the thing. The plane was flying northeast to Beijing, and then the fire starts. Witnesses see the plane start on fire, and then it turns back around. And it flies all the way back over Malaysia. You think Malaysia didn't know there's a Boeing 777 flying over it off path? Of course they did. Of course they did. It doesn't land, probably because of the fire. Or at that point, the United States government had either taken control of the plane or told the plane where to fly. They fly it to the rendezvous point. Rendezvous points where the drone is sitting there waiting. The other drone is loitering overhead. Malaysian Airlines comes flying into the view. The orbs come spinning around the plane. Zap. And then people are like, oh, now you're saying it's like a fusion bomb? Well, I thought you were saying it was teleported. Yeah, I'm saying that maybe it's the same thing. Or maybe there's some splinter case. Like, I don't even really know. No one seems to really know. But maybe whatever connection they found out from thermonuclear detonations, they figured out space-time manipulation. And the reason why I'm so confident about this is like the sequence of the orbs and triangle formation around the plane looks identical to thermonuclear, what they call it, booster detonation, where it's like fission explosions, 3 fission explosions around an object cause an implosive fusion reaction. And by the way, guess what the material is that they use for the fusion reaction? Lithium-6. The plane is loaded with lithium-6, like hundreds of pounds of lithium-ion batteries in the center of this plane, which everybody's been saying it's a weird that this plane had this on board. And I'm sitting here going, and that's the exact thing you need for a thermonuclear detonation. They would just have to make sure that the batteries were made out of like this specific variant of it, which we now know for sure, like Mossad did with those pager bombs that they did like a while back. So now I'm just sitting here going, man, wild. I'm like, this must be. And here's the other thing. When I was Googling around, someone please fact check me if I'm wrong, but supposedly all detonations over 1 megaton are thermonuclear. Just all are. Like the only detonations that are larger than 1 megaton are thermonuclear. The main idea would be that like basically all major detonations are of thermonuclear origin, essentially, is what that would mean. And if that's the case, then what we're seeing in the MH370 videos must have a thermonuclear origin. I was originally thinking it's producing an EMP when the orbs are coming together. It's making some kind of EMP that's not hot. Well, it turns out that's what an aneutronic reaction looks like, or what an aneutronic reaction would be like. So I don't know. More to come, guys. It's going to be interesting. But yeah, go ahead.
It's exciting, man. I like following your work. It's interesting. I think you're a good guy. I like the way that you block out the noise. I think it's super important. Thank you for coming on the show, man. I appreciate it. Thank you for your time. We pretty much ran right as long as we said we would, which is great. And is there anything you want to plug just quickly before we head out?
I don't think I really want to plug anything, but I do want to just apologize to, all the situations and the drama that was happening out there. Just the people from, Contact, the whole situation with this book from Mike, because he's a good guy. He didn't really deserve all the hate that he got around this book and whatever weird shit happened with that website. There's nothing about Epstein in this anywhere, as far as I can tell. And, to the girl that had the girl drama, and then to the guy who was involved in that. None of these people deserve any of the hate. I saw some people trying to post hate about, that. It's just, relationship stuff happens, things happen. Just move on, live on, be adults. No big deal.
That's it. Nobody's perfect. A little bit of understanding and empathy, I think, goes a long way. Well, mate, if when Classic Plus launches, I think me and you need to start a guild.
They're gonna do it again? No, I can't do it.
Yeah,
again,
they're doing Classic Plus.
Nah,
all right.
I'm out on all that, but yeah, we'll definitely jam something at some point. We'll do something nerdy. So sounds good.
Yeah,
thanks
sounds
Josh.
good, bro. You're welcome, man. Looking forward to it. Take care. Thanks, everybody.
Eventually, people are going to say, "What the hell is going on?"
No matter how far you go into the dark, when you flip, you go exactly the same place to the light in our galaxy. Everything. Because everything is in balance. Everything is a polarity.
I think it's just going to get weirder and weirder and weirder, and finally it's going to be so weird that people are going to have to talk about how weird it is.